Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Energy production in Utah seems to be in the headlines, in the news, on people's minds almost every day. But the alternative oil-based energy is of particular interest, mostly because people don't fully understand it. Well, that is the topic of our show today. We are going to talk about the oil sands and shale development that holds so much potential in the Uinta Basin and is referred to constantly as the economic solution for Utah and its future. Joining us today for our conversation, Barclay Cuthbert, who is the Vice President of Operations of U.S. Oil Sands. Barclay, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Rikki Hrenko-Browing, who's the CEO of Enefit Oil America. This is the oil shale developer that is looking at working out in the Uinta Basin as well. Thank you for joining us. I would like to take a few minutes because there are many people who think that this is all one operation and that what you are doing with U.S. Oil Sands is the same as what you are doing with oil shale. So let's start with you, Barclay, and just take a couple of minutes and tell us about oil sands and the operation.
Sure. Oil sands, they're a naturally occurring substance. They occur all over the world. The largest deposits are up in Canada, but there's also sizable deposits down here in the United States. The oil itself is a very, very thick, viscous oil. It's oil that's typically has been degraded either by exposure to the elements or by microbial action, so you can't produce it as you would in a conventional well by pumping it. So in deposits that are shallow, as the ones are in PR Spring where we operate, you will mine that material, extract the bitumen from the rock, and return those tailings back out to the mine site. At other deposits where they're deeper, you can produce those through wells, but typically have to heat the oil first by injecting steam. And a good example of that is out on California. They have thermal oil wells where they pump steam and produce the oil, and you do that much the same way in these types of deposits.
Okay, Rikki, let's talk a little bit about the oil shale operation in Enefit. This has a long history. This isn't like brand new technology, is it?
That's right, Chad. We're not recreating the wheel here. So oil shale, just to set aside a few misconceptions, is actually a rock like this. It's not the same resource as oil sands, and it's not what you're commonly hearing about in terms of fracking. What we have here is a rock that has an organic material in it. We mine it, we process it, and then we're able to produce oil from it. We use conventional methods to do that. We just string them together in a little bit of a different way. So it's mining, which we do a lot of here in Utah already. It's mineral processing through a retort process, basically heating it up in the absence of oxygen to get vapors, and then putting it through some simple refinery type processes, condensation units, upgrading units. But again, we're not recreating the wheel. Our parent company is based in Europe, in Estonia, and they've actually been utilizing oil shale for about 100 years already, both for power production and for oil production. The country of Estonia is energy independent because of the oil shale production that they use there for power production, and they've been producing oil commercially for 30 years. So what we're doing here in Utah is essentially taking into account the differences in the oil shale, because it is different everywhere you go. You can see it from these three pieces sitting right here. We've got Estonian, Utah, and Jordanian oil shale, and you can physically see they're different. And tweaking that process to take into account those differences and environmental differences and moving forward with engineering and permitting.
Utah's looks the closest to oil in its rock form right there.
Yeah, it looks the darkest. It is the most appealing, but you know, there's a lot of differences between all three in terms of oil yield, moisture content, all sorts of details.
Well, I want to shift our conversation from shale and sands as far as your production to some of the misconceptions about it, and there are many areas in the economics of it, the potential of it, and in the environmental concerns. So we're going to tackle the hardest one of them first right after this commercial break. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute.
The Bear Lake Valley is a beautiful, rural, historical, and recreational paradise. The changing of the season makes now a great time to come our way to see the warm colors of fall in contrast with the cool blues of Bear Lake. Visit us in the Bear Lake Valley. Come for the ride, stay for the adventure.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City, Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
It makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about the new horizon of oil energy development with shales and oil sands. Joining us for our conversation today, Barclay Cuthbert, who's Vice President of Operations of U.S. Oil Sands, Rikki Hrenko-Browing, who's the CEO of Enefit American Oil. So let's get back to the conversation. I want to talk about the environmental misperceptions, because with both of you having been at some of these energy summits around the state and hearing and actually touring and seeing your operations, what I hear about and read about and what you're actually doing is significantly different. U.S. Oil Sands is following or is often linked to the mining that's going on in Canada for oil sands, where they're near the surface. And I keep hearing phrases of massive strip mining and land raping thousands of square miles. And that's not how your process really works, is it?
No, and I guess one of the, the biggest drawbacks of the projects up north is that they employ tailings ponds. When they separate the bitumen from the sands, there are particles within those sands that stay within the water, and they can't reuse that water right away. So that water gets discharged into what they call tailings ponds, and those can span many square miles in size. They do turn out to be very massive structures, and in our case, we've found a way to extract the oil or the bitumen from the oil sand using a naturally occurring solvent, and that allows us to do it very quickly and in a gentle fashion, so we don't stabilize those materials within the water, and that allows us to reuse the water right away and not have to sterilize any lands or take up any lands with the tailings ponds.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, that solvent is almost like citrus, or
sure,
it's like orange rinds.
Yeah, it's an oil that comes out of orange rinds, so it's a byproduct of the oil, or of the citrus processing industry. So this doesn't take away from any food stocks or anything like that, but it is an oil. It's been long known to have very good solvency properties. They use it in everything from dish detergent to hand cleaners. It gets used in the manufacture of tires, and we've found it works very well to extract bitumen from oil sands. So we've done that. Another thing we've done is this technology allows us to produce at smaller scale, so we don't have to have those massive projects that you see up north. We're going to start with a 2,000 barrel a day facility that's only going to have an operating mine surface area of about 30 acres at any one time.
The pit that's open right now looks like a couple of football fields strung together.
Yeah, and we use that football stadium analogy quite often, that the depth of our mine and the size of the opening is akin to what a football stadium is, and you just have to think about that mine or that football stadium slowly moving around the territory as we extract new resources and concurrently reclaim behind us, so that we're cleaning up the areas that have been depleted of resource.
The thing that I hear about Enefit is they show these large mountains in Estonia that have basically been cleared away, and they show the working face always of the mine. They don't show the reclaimed side. Mm-hmm. Tell us, let's dispel a little bit of the myths about how bad this is going to be. Particularly, I hear that you're going to consume just all of the water in the Colorado River to make this happen.
You've hit on so many things here. I mean, to start with these pictures that they show from Estonia, you have to keep in mind that oil shale is the country's biggest industry, and our company Enefit is not the only one producing. There are 2 other companies that have been producing for decades as well, for actually about 100 years in total. And a lot of that happened under the Soviet times when the environmental regulations were very different than they are today. The operations that our company has today are very, very different, and a lot of those pictures you see floating around are not us. Our company is actually awarded regularly in Estonia for its environmental work. We have fully reclaimed mines where if you go out and look now, you wouldn't even know there was ever a mine there. In addition to that, when we plan new mines, one of the things that's really important is taking into account the community uses afterwards. Some of them have been made into nature preserves. Some of them have also been made into things the community wants, such as a rowing facility, using the old mines as rowing channels. The other thing that's a little bit similar to what Barclay was saying is that we do have ongoing reclamation. So in a similar sense, you may see some open area of the mine, and that's true, but we're constantly reclaiming as we move forward as well. So you open a new area and you reclaim the previous area. It is an ongoing reclamation process. And in terms of water, well, those estimates are taken entirely out of context. There are many different technologies, many different projects. I can't speak on behalf of some of the other new types of technologies that are trying to be developed. Our process, our technology, our project is minimizing water use. What we are currently designing for is 100% recycle of all water, so no discharge. All of the water that we use will be cleaned and reused in the process, particularly for dust control in the mining. The process itself to get oil out of the rock doesn't even require any water. The biggest water user is in the mining and in the reclamation, and some industrial water for the oil upgrading process, similar to a refinery. To produce about 1 barrel of oil, it's going to take between 1 and 3 barrels of water. And that's not our number, that's a number that comes out of an independent research study. We're going to be on the lower end of that in terms of our design today. If you take that into context of something that we all use every day, a 2-liter bottle of your favorite sweetened cola, that takes anywhere between 4 and 8 barrels of water to produce that 1 bottle of cola. So you can get a barrel of oil for 1 to 3 barrels of water, or you can get a 2-liter of cola for 4 to 8 barrels of water.
But the cola will always taste better.
Well, it might taste better, but what's the economic value?
And similarly for us, again, we've improved our process so that we're under a barrel of water used per barrel of oil produced. And again, most of that is water that remains in the tailings to assist in the reclamation as those sands go back out to the mine face. The water resources we've developed are deep. They're about 2,000 feet down, so we're not impacting any of the existing water at our site or any of the surface users of that water, humans or animals. And then the water that we do bring up from that deep aquifer will be used in the reclamation. And similarly on the air side, the bitumen and oil sands have been branded as dirty oil because there's these reports that it takes more energy to produce 1 barrel of bitumen than you get out of it, which is patently false. Ours is a very efficient process, and in fact, when you look at a wells to wheels comparison, which means from the time that the resource is removed from the earth to when it's burned as a transportation fuel in the tank, our GHG emissions will be less than the average barrel refined in the U.S. in 2005. So our production will be less than some of the existing oil sources that the U.S. uses right now from the continental U.S.
And pretty similar to that is the topic of EROI, which basically looks at the amount of energy that you get out versus the amount of energy that you put into a process.
And to be clear for the audience, that's the energy return on investment, right?
Correct, thank you, exactly. So if you look at that ratio about how much energy do you actually get out versus put in, there's a lot of crazy myths out there that you're never going to be able to break even, but from our actual production in Estonia, real numbers, anyone could go out and measure today, we're seeing about 10 to 11 units of energy out for every unit of energy put in. And we're going to see something similar here for Utah as well, and I suspect that your situation is pretty similar.
It's a very efficient process.
Good. We've actually set ourselves up to move on to technology as our topic when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be back with more of the County Seat, talking about new ways of developing oil energy in Utah. It's a great conversation. Call your friends during this break. Tell them to tune in and come back with a notepad. You're going to want to take some notes. We'll be right back in a minute.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? Well, in Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough, get away.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Next. Have you experienced diarrhea in the last 2 weeks? Did you shower today? With soap? Did you wash well? Down there and back there? Ugh. Go see Olga. Ew.
There aren't a lot of places in this world where you can feel truly free and wild, where the horizon invites you to set off on adventure. In Tooele County, you'll find just that. Explore the Benson Grist Mill and step back in time. Find yourself on a trek through our canyons. Tooele County. Experience endless horizons.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've had an interesting discussion today on oil sands and oil shale. For those of you who think they're the same, we're going to ask you to rewind and go back and catch our show online because you'll find they're very different. But the potential for them is very bright in both cases. So I want to move on. We have been talking about the environmental misperceptions. What have you guys learned since you started to ramp up for processing in the Uinta Basin?
Sure. Well, oil sands, the mineable oil sands have been produced and up till now they've been based on a technology that was developed in the 1920s by Dr. Carl Clark, which was called the Clark hot water method. And again, that was a method where you mixed the oil sands with hot water, took lots of mechanical energy in mixing and led to these tailings that have filled the ponds and led to the environmental concerns. And what we've found is that initially by adding the solvent in, we can extract the bitumen much more quickly and much more effectively than just by using hot water alone, and thus avoid creating the tailings ponds that you see up in northern Alberta. As we've gotten further into our research, we find that there's other, there's constituents within the sand itself, things like ions or clay species, things like that affect the extraction performance. And by treating for specific types of clays that are present, you can get a much better extraction while making sure you don't create any of those negative impacts that you see in other operations.
Okay, so your technology is moving. I'm going to say one more technology question. Rikki, from your standpoint.
Yeah, for us, of course, we're always developing, and we have this great advantage to have a parent company who's operating every day, so the lessons learned are huge. What we really focus on are ways to increase efficiency. So for this project, for example, we're actually planning to be a net power producer. We're not going to be needing regular power from the grid, but actually putting power back on because we've gotten really good at learning how to utilize excess heat that's generated in the process. And of course, reducing water consumption and environmental performance. When Estonia transitioned from Soviet rule to European Union environmental regulations, it was quite a tough learning curve, but that has led to a lot of benefits and lessons learned about how we're going to develop the project here in Utah. The other big one that I get on technology is just that it simply doesn't even exist. Not just that it's improving all the time, but that there is no technology. And that's completely incorrect. It's not in the US today, but Estonia is producing, several different companies at a large industrial scale. Brazil, the oil giant Petrobras, actually produces shale oil from oil shale today. China, Australia is developing significantly, so it is being produced.
Are you looking for new technology with or without regulation to make the process more efficient and cleaner?
In our case, again, one of the drivers for looking for efficiencies is every efficiency that we're able to incorporate reduces our operating cost and makes it that much more profitable to extract a barrel of bitumen. So we incorporate a lot of technologies that have been developed within the conventional oil and gas industry, whether it's heat exchanging or waste heat recovery off our electrical generators. We're doing all that we can to collect as much heat, so we have to put as few inputs in as possible to produce that barrel of bitumen.
I would completely agree with that. And the other thing that's a little bit different than what the Uinta Basin has seen from energy industries in the past is that we're going to be there a long time. This is a multi-billion-dollar project that is planned to operate for 30+ years. That means we're going to be members of this community for a very long time, for several decades. So definitely we have the same benefits. Of course, it's an improvement to our economics the more efficient that we can make it, but it's also important to us that we're being very careful about how we actively plan this very long-term project. We're going to be there for a long time.
Great. I'm going to take a break. We're going to hold over our economic question until we get back after this break. You're watching The County Seat. We're talking about oil sands and oil shale here in the state of Utah. We'll be right back.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
What's the story of your life? What chapter are you on? Did you happen to get married recently? Perhaps you found your lost puppy at the animal shelter. Or you're taking an art class at the senior center. There's that flu shot that kept you well last season. And don't forget the museums and historical sites your family loves. And all the fun you have at the County Swim Center. County services from search and rescue to maintaining roads bring tremendous value to each of our lives. We're the Utah Association of Counties, helping you build the story of your life.
Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure? It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Welcome back to The County Seat. Our conversation today has been about oil sands and oil shale. We were on the cusp of talking about economics of it. Let's talk about aggregates for a minute. With both of you, what kind of assets in oil, in terms of barrels, sit out in the Uinta Basin?
Well, there's billions of barrels of bitumen throughout the state of Utah. They're in about 7 principal deposits. On our leases, we have about 32,000 acres leased from the state. On one 6,000 acre block, we have 184 million barrels in place. And so that's going to allow us to produce for between 15 and 20 years. And one of the things that makes us different from the conventional oil industry is that once you have your equipment and your facilities out there, it's much more like a manufacturing operation. So that facility is going to run every day for the next 15 years. It's not going to be where, prices are down, so we shut everything down and lay down our equipment. It's going to be functioning every day, so it leads to very long-lived jobs in the basin.
The oil shale industry is very similar in that respect. The resource is absolutely immense. Globally, there's about 3 trillion barrels of oil locked in oil shale. That's 3 times the amount of known conventional oil reserves. About 72% of that is in the U.S., primarily spread across Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming. Utah has massive resources that are closer to the surface than that in Colorado, and obviously a regulatory and political environment that is much more supportive of energy development. On our property alone, we've got about 30,000 acres and about 2.6 billion barrels. 2/3 of that is private property. So the resource potential is extremely significant, and just as Barclay said, once you build this plant, it runs for decades. It is not nearly as sensitive to oil price going up and down as what a lot of people have previously thought.
Now, you had mentioned that your biggest regulatory hurdle is just getting the support utilities across federal land to the private land to develop.
That's right.
How does that change things?
Well, it significantly lengthens our time frame. The project that we're developing right now is on a portion of our private property, but it doesn't have any utilities. So to bring out water, power, natural gas, and oil pipeline to move the product out, because we are going to be pipelining, not trucking, we have to go through a NEPA process with the BLM because those utilities have to cross federal property. That adds significantly to our permitting costs and even more significantly to the timeline. And for a lot of people in the basin, that can be frustrating. When we talk about our project, we're talking about 50,000 barrels a day over a 30-year time span, and that's only from a portion of our property. That's 2,000 new direct jobs just from that 50,000 barrels a day. So people are very eager to see us develop. We are as well, but the permitting burden is quite lengthy.
Let me go on and just ask one last question. Reclamation. Both of you are involved in reclamation when you're done. How long does it take to take your football stadium and put it back?
We look at between 4 and 6 years to have a mined area backfilled with the tails, topsoil pulled back on the surface, a native seed mix applied, and regrowth of plants. So, again, 6 years after we've dug out the oil sands, you look at it, there'll be new grasses, new sagebrush growing, and it will be a good habitat for the wildlife out there.
What about your reclamation efforts?
It's similar. The environment here is what's going to primarily dictate the amount of time that it's going to take for the populations to come back, but you're talking about a number of years. You're not talking about eons. Because it is ongoing reclamation, you're going to start seeing areas reclaimed much earlier in the process in a very similar time frame.
Very quickly, if there are any misperceptions we've missed that we should tell people about, either one of you.
One thing I think that comes up is people think that the residents of the county are footing the bill for a lot of energy development. And I'd just like to point out that in the county, the extractive and the energy industry is providing more than 50% of the tax base. And that's where all of the infrastructure and community services are funded from.
And I think as well, the residents of the county are all highly supportive of what we're doing out there, and it's great to see, and we're very thankful for that support.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You're both very busy. I appreciate your taking the time. Thank you for taking the time to turn on this program. Be sure to take the time to share it with your friends and get the word out about this. We'll look for you next week on the County Seat. Thank you very much.
Red, White, and Road is this coming weekend, October 10th and 11th in Torrey, Utah. Meet up Friday night and ride all day Saturday. You didn't miss the most amazing motorcycle event of the year. Sign up now at AYLTV.com and be registered to win a fly riding jacket and a Honda snowblower, all free. Get an event t-shirt, lunch, a Dutch oven dinner, and experience Highway 12 and the beauty of Central Utah. Red, White, and Road, October 10th and 11th. The weather looks good and the ride looks even better. Sign up now at AYLTV.com. Red, White, and Road, October 10th and 11th.
If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.